At the time when Aghasura was killed and the demigods were looking on the incident with great surprise, Brahma, who was born of the lotus flower growing out of the navel of Vishnu, also came to see. He was surprised how a little boy like Krishna could act so wonderfully. Although he was informed that the little cowherd boy was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he wanted to see more of the Lord's glorious pastimes, and thus he stole all the cows and cowherd boys and took them to a different place. Lord Krishna, therefore, in spite of searching for the calves, could not find them, and he even lost his boyfriends on the bank of the Yamuna, where they had been taking their lunch. In the form of a cowherd boy, Lord Krishna was very little in comparison to Brahma. But because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could immediately understand that all the calves and boys had been stolen by Brahma. Krishna thought, Brahma has taken away all the boys and calves. How can I alone return to Vrindavana? The mothers will be aggrieved. Therefore, in order to satisfy the mothers of his friends, as well as to convince Brahma of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead, he immediately expanded himself as the cowherd boys and calves. In the Vedas, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has already expanded himself into so many living entities by his energy. Therefore, it was not very difficult for him to expand himself again into so many boys and calves. He expanded himself to become exactly like the boys, who were all of different features and facial and bodily constructions, and who were different in their clothing and ornaments and in their behavior and personal activities. In other words, although each boy, being an individual soul, had entirely different tastes, activities, and behavior, Krishna exactly expanded himself into all the different positions of the individual boys. He also became the calves, who were also of different sizes, colors, activities, etc. This was possible because everything is an expansion of Krishna's energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is said, Parasya Brahmanaha Shaktihi. Whatever we actually see in the cosmic manifestation, be it matter or the activities of the living entities, is simply an expansion of the energies of the Lord. As heat and light are the different expansions of fire. Thus expanding himself as the boys and the calves in their individual capacities, and surrounded by such expansions of himself, Krishna entered the village of Vrindavana. The residents had no knowledge of what had happened. After entering the village of Vrindavana, all the calves entered their respective cowsheds, and the boys went to their respective mothers and homes. The mothers of the boys heard the vibration of their flutes before their entrance, and to receive them, they came out of their homes and embraced them, and out of maternal affection, milk was flowing from their breasts, and they allowed the boys to drink it. However, their offering was not exactly to their boys, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had expanded himself into such boys. This was a chance for all the mothers of Vrindavana to feed the Supreme Personality of Godhead with their own milk. Therefore, not only did Lord Krishna give Yashoda the chance to feed him, but this time he gave the chance to all the other elder gopis. All the boys dealt with their mothers as usual, and the mothers also, on the approach of evening, bathed their respective children, decorated them with tilaka and ornaments, and gave them necessary food after the day's labor. The cows also, who had been away in the pasturing ground, returned in the evening and called their respective calves. The calves immediately came to their mothers, and the mothers began to lick the bodies of the calves. These relations of the cows and the gopis with their calves and boys remained unchanged, although actually the original calves and boys were not there. Actually, the cows' affection for their calves and the elder gopis' affection for their boys causelessly increased. Their affection increased naturally, even though the calves and boys were not their offspring. Although the cows and elder gopis of Vrindavana had greater affection for Krishna than for their own offspring, after this incident, their affection for their own offspring increased unlimitedly, exactly as it did for Krishna. For 1 year continuously, Krishna himself expanded as the cows and cowherd boys and was present in the pasturing ground. As it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's expansion is situated in everyone's heart as the Super Soul. Similarly, instead of expanding himself as the Super Soul, he expanded himself as a portion of calves and cowherd boys for 1 continuous year. One day, a few days before a year had passed, Krishna and Balarama were maintaining the calves in the forest when they saw some cows grazing on the top of Govardhana hill. The cows could see down into the valley where the calves were being taken care of by the boys. Suddenly, on sighting the cows began to run toward them. They leaped downhill with joined front and rear legs. The cows were so melted with affection for the calves that they did not care about the rough path from the top of Govardhana hill down to the pasturing ground. They approached the calves with their milk bags full of milk, and they raised their tails upwards. When they were coming down the hill, their milk bags were pouring milk on the ground out of intense maternal affection for the calves, although they were not their own calves. These cows had their own calves, and the calves that were grazing beneath the Govardhana hill were larger. They were not expected to drink milk directly from the milk bag, but were satisfied with the grass. Yet, all the cows came immediately and began to lick their bodies, and the calves also began to suck milk from the milk bags. There appeared to be a great bond of affection between the cows and calves. When the cows were running down from the top of Govardhana hill, the men who were taking care of them tried to stop them. Older cows are taken care of by the men, and the calves are taken care of by the boys. And as far as possible, the calves are kept separate from the cows so that the calves do not drink all the available milk. Therefore, the men who were taking care of the cows on the top of the Govardhana hill tried to stop them, but they failed. Baffled by their failure, they were feeling ashamed and angry. They were very unhappy. But when they came down and saw their children taking care of the calves, they all of a sudden became very affectionate toward the children. It was very astonishing. Although the men came down disappointed, baffled, and angry, as soon as they saw their own children, their hearts melted with great affection. At once, their anger, dissatisfaction, and unhappiness disappeared. They began to show paternal love for the children, and with great affection, they lifted them in their arms and embraced them. They began to smell their children's heads and enjoy their company with great happiness. After embracing their children, the men took the cows back to the top of Govardhana hill. Along the way, they began to think of their children, and affectionate tears fell from their eyes. When Balrama saw this extraordinary exchange of affection between the cows and the calves, and between the fathers and their children, when neither the calves nor the children needed so much care, he began to wonder why this extraordinary thing had happened. He was astonished to see all the residents of Vrindavana so affectionate to their own children, exactly as they had been to Krishna. Similarly, the cows had grown affectionate to the calves as much as to Krishna. Balarama therefore concluded that the extraordinary show of affection was something mystical, either performed by the demigods or by some powerful man. Otherwise, how could this wonderful change take place? He concluded that this mystical change must have been caused by Krishna, whom Balarama considered his worshipable personality of Godhead. He thought, it was arranged by Krishna, and even I could not check its mystic power. Thus, Balarama understood that all those boys and calves were only expansions of Krishna. Balarama inquired from Krishna about the actual situation. He said, "My dear Krishna, in the beginning I thought that all these calves and cowherd boys were either great sages and saintly persons or demigods. But at present it appears that they are actually your expansions. They are all you. You yourself are playing as the calves and boys. What is the mystery of this situation? Where have those other calves and boys gone? And why are you expanding yourself as the calves and boys? Will you kindly tell me what is the cause?" At the request of Balarama, Krishna briefly explained the whole situation, how the calves and boys had been stolen by Brahma, and how Krishna was concealing the incident by expanding himself so people would not know that the original calves and boys were missing. While Krishna and Balarama were talking, Brahma returned after a moment's interval, according to the duration of his life. We have information of Lord Brahma's duration of life from the Bhagavad Gita. 1,000 times the duration of the 4 ages, or 1,000 multiplied by 4,320,000 years, constitute Brahma's 12 hours. Similarly, 1 moment of Brahma's time is equal to 1 year of our solar calculation. After one moment of Brahma's calculation, Brahma came back to see the fun caused by his stealing the boys and calves. But he was also afraid that he was playing with fire. Krishna was his master, and he had played mischief for fun by taking away his calves and boys. He was really anxious, so he did not stay away very long. He came back after a moment, by his calculation. He saw that all the boys and calves were playing with Krishna in the same way as when he had come upon them, although he was confident that he had taken them and made them lie down asleep under the spell of his mystic power. Brahma began to think, all the boys and calves were taken away by me, and I know they are still sleeping. How is it that a similar batch of boys and calves is playing with Krishna? Is it that they are not influenced by my mystic power? Have they been playing continually for 1 year with Krishna? Brahma tried to understand who they were and how they were uninfluenced by his mystic power, but he could not ascertain it. In other words, he himself came under the spell of his own mystic power. The influence of his mystic power appeared like snow in darkness or a glowworm in the daytime. During the night's darkness, the glowworm can show some glittering power, and the snow piled up on top of a hill or on the ground can shine during daytime. But at night, the snow has no silver glitter, nor does the glowworm have any illuminating power during the daytime. Similarly, when the small mystic power exhibited by Brahma was before the mystic power of Krishna, it was just like snow at night or a glowworm during the day. When a man of small mystic power wants to show potency in the presence of greater mystic power, he diminishes his own influence. He does not increase it. Even such a great personality as Brahma, when he wanted to show his mystic power before Krishna, became ludicrous. Brahma was thus confused about his own mystic power. In order to convince Brahma that all those calves and boys were not the original ones, the calves and boys who were playing with Krishna transformed into Vishnu forms. Actually, the original ones were sleeping under the spell of Brahma's mystic power, but the present ones, seen by Brahma, were all immediate expansions of Krishna or Vishnu. Vishnu is the expansion of Krishna. So the Vishnu forms appeared before Brahma. All the Vishnu forms were of bluish color and dressed in yellow garments. All of them had 4 hands decorated with club, disc, lotus flower and conch shell. On their heads were glittering golden helmets inlaid with jewels. They were bedecked with pearls and earrings and garlanded with beautiful flowers. On their chests was the mark of Shrivatsa. Their arms were decorated with armlets and other jewelry, and their necks were just like conch shells. Their legs were decorated with bells, their waists with golden belts, and their fingers with jeweled rings. Brahma also saw that upon the whole body of each Lord Vishnu, from the lotus feet up to the top of the head, fresh tulasi leaves and buds had been thrown. Another significant feature of the Vishnu forms was that all of them were looking transcendently beautiful. Their smiling resembled the moonshine, and their glancing resembled the early rising of the sun. Just by their glancing, they showed themselves to be the creators and maintainers of the modes of ignorance and passion. Vishnu represents the mode of goodness, Brahma represents the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva represents the mode of ignorance. Therefore, as the maintainer of everything in the cosmic manifestation, Vishnu is also the creator and maintainer of Brahma and Lord Shiva. After this manifestation of Lord Vishnu, Brahma saw that many other Brahmas and Shivas and demigods and even insignificant living entities down to the ants and very small straws, all moving and non-moving living entities, were dancing surrounding Lord Vishnu. Their dancing was accompanied by various kinds of music, and all of them were worshipping Lord Vishnu. Brahma realized that all those Vishnu forms were complete in mystic power, from the Anima perfection of becoming small like an atom up to becoming infinite like the cosmic manifestation. All the mystic powers of Brahma, Shiva, all the demigods and the 24 elements of cosmic manifestation were fully represented in the person of Vishnu. By the influence of Lord Vishnu, all subordinate mystic powers were engaged in his worship. He was being worshipped by time, space, the cosmic manifestation, reformation, desire, activity, and the three qualities of material nature. Lord Vishnu, Brahma also realized, is the reservoir of all truth, knowledge, and bliss. He is the combination of three transcendental features, namely eternity, knowledge, and bliss. He is the object of worship by the followers of the Upanishads. Brahma realized that all the different forms of boys and calves transformed into Vishnu forms were not transformed by a mysticism of the type that a yogi or demigod can display by specific powers invested in him. The cows and boys transformed into Vishnu Murtis or Vishnu forms were not displays of Vishnu Maya or Vishnu's energy, but were Vishnu himself. The respective qualifications of Vishnu and Vishnu Maya are just like fire and heat. In the heat, there is the qualification of fire, namely warmth, and yet heat is not fire. The manifestation of the Vishnu forms of the boys and calves was not like the heat, but was rather the fire. They were all actually Vishnu. Factually, the qualification of Vishnu is full truth, full knowledge, and full bliss. Another example can be given with material objects which are reflected in many forms. For example, the sun is reflected in many water pots, but the reflections of the sun in the many pots are not actually the sun. There is no actual heat or light from the suns in the pots, although they appear like the sun. But the forms which Krishna assumed were each and every one full Vishnu. The specific word used in this connection is Satya Jnana Anantananda. Satya means truth, Jnana, full knowledge, Ananta, unlimited, and Ananda, full bliss. The glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are so great that the impersonalistic followers of the Upanishads cannot reach the platform of knowledge to understand them. Especially the transcendental forms of the Lord are beyond the reach of the impersonalists, who can only understand through studying the Upanishads that the absolute truth is not matter or is not materially restricted. From Krishna's expansion into Vishnu forms, Lord Brahma could understand by his limited potency that everything movable and immovable within the cosmic manifestation is existing due to the expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord. When Brahma was thus standing baffled in his limited power and conscious of his limited activities within the 11 senses, he could realize that he was also a creation of the material energy, just like a puppet. As a puppet has no independent power to dance, but dances according to the direction of the puppet master, so the demigods and living entities are all subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As it is stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the only master is Krishna, and all others are his servants. The whole world is under the waves of the material spell, and beings are floating like straws in water. So their struggle for existence is continuing. But as soon as one becomes conscious that he is the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this Maya or illusory struggle for existence is immediately stopped. Lord Brahma, who has full control over the goodness of learning and who is considered to be the best authority in Vedic knowledge, was thus perplexed, being unable to understand the extraordinary power manifested by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the mundane world, even a personality like Brahma is unable to understand the mystic power of the Supreme Lord. Not only did Brahma fail to understand, but he was perplexed even to see the display which was being manifested by Krishna before him. Krishna took compassion upon Brahma because of his inability to see how Krishna was displaying the forms of Vishnu and transforming himself into calves and cowherd boys. And thus, while fully manifesting the Vishnu expansions, he suddenly pulled his curtain of Yoga Maya over the scene. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not visible due to the curtain spread by Yoga Maya. That which covers the reality is Mahamaya, or the external energy, which does not allow a conditioned soul to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead beyond the cosmic manifestation. But the energy which partially manifests the Supreme Personality of Godhead and partially does not allow one to see it is called Yoga Maya. Brahma is not an ordinary conditioned soul. He is far superior to all the other demigods, and yet he could not comprehend the display of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Krishna willingly stopped manifesting any further potency. The conditioned soul not only becomes bewildered, but is completely unable to understand. The curtain of Yogamaya was drawn so that Brahma would not become more and more perplexed. When Brahma was relieved from his perplexity, he appeared to awaken from an almost dead state, and he began to open his eyes with great difficulty. Thus, he could see the external cosmic manifestation with common eyes. He saw all around him the super excellent view of Vrindavana, full with trees, which is the source of life for all living entities. He could appreciate the transcendental land of Vrindavana, where all the living entities are transcendental to ordinary nature. In the forest of Vrindavana, even ferocious animals like tigers live peacefully along with the deer and human beings. He could understand that because of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vrindavana is transcendental to all other places and is free of lust and greed. Brahma thus found Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, playing the part of a small cowherd boy. He saw that little child with a lump of food in his left hand, searching out his friends and calves, just as he had actually been doing 1 year before, after their disappearance. Immediately, Brahma descended from his great swan carrier and fell down before the Lord, just like a golden stick. The word used among the Vaishnavas for offering respect is Dandavata. This word means falling down like a stick. One should offer respect to the superior Vaishnava by falling down straight, with his body just like a stick. So Brahma fell down before the Lord just like a stick to offer respect, and because the complexion of Brahma is golden, he appeared to be like a golden stick lying down before Lord Krishna. All the 4 helmets on the heads of Brahma touched the lotus feet of Krishna. Brahma, being very joyful, began to shed tears, and he washed the lotus feet of Krishna with his tears. Repeatedly, he fell and rose as he recalled the wonderful activities of the Lord. After repeating obeisances for a long time, Brahma stood up and smeared his hands over his eyes. Seeing the Lord before him, he, trembling, began to offer prayers with great respect, humility, and attention. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 13th chapter of Krishna, the stealing of the boys and calves by Brahma.